I'm going to show you a very cool short attacking game played on the second day of the Freestyle Chess Go Challenge in Weissenhaus, Germany. It's a game played between Levon Aronian, always super creative and having original ideas, and he's playing with the white pieces against the reigning world champion Ding Liren, who is actually totally out of shape. First of all, he had a terrible tournament in January in Wijk aan Zee, and now he started this new tournament with 4 losses on the first day. Now, let's see if Ding Liren, the world champion, is able to bounce back, but things are not simple at all. Let's have a look at the starting position, because it's a freestyle chess or Fischer random, chess 960, however you would like to call it. So therefore we have to start thinking on the very first move. Now we see that these two bishops on a1 and b1, they are placed in the corner, but starting with this move 1c4, white is already seizing the initiative by attacking the pawn on h7. And how should black deal with that threat? Well, things are not that simple. If you play here the move h6, then the bishop will come there anyway, and then the rook is trapped on g8. So that's a funny, tricky idea. You may block the diagonal instead with the move g6, but then your knight on h8 is just awfully misplaced. So that's also not what you want to do, and therefore Ding played here the move knight g6. So he brings the knight into the game, and now white played the move f4. So opening up the path for the queen, maybe at the right moment the pawn can kick the knight away to an inferior square. But black played here first the move c5, hitting that pawn on f4 together with the knight and bishop. So white got to think about what to do. If you kick the knight away here with the move f5, well, then the knight comes into e5. It's supported by the bishop. It even hits the pawn on c4. So that's not a good idea. You better don't move your pawn away from f4. Instead, Aronian played a very nice subtle idea with the move e3. He's just protecting that pawn on f4, and even though you would like to advance your pawns, sometimes you may use your pawns instead also in such a way that you're restricting the mobility of your opponent's pieces. So I like this pawn configuration by white. Black played here the move b6, so now also opening up the diagonal for the bishop on a8, and so does white. So both bishops of white and black, they are trying to exert pressure on these long diagonals, and that's a very typical strategy to employ your bishop pair. Well, black played here the move f6, so trying to reduce the activity exerted by this bishop on a1, and white comes up with a very interesting idea. Played here the move queen f2. That's maybe not a move you would have expected. Like normally you should not bring your queen out too early, but here the idea probably is that now after black played the move queen f7, you would expect white here just to castle kingside, and that's a very logical idea, but it was not played in the game. And what Aronian does is very instructive. He postpones the decision of where to place his king, and instead he decides to launch its g-pawn. And that's a very surprising idea. But on the other hand, you're trying to gain space to create more possibilities with your major pieces on that side of the board. Even the knight can be brought into play via g3. So not a strange idea at all, but at the same time, Aronian also violates the golden rules of opening play, trying to bring your king into safety. Let's see how black responds here with the move d5, trying to strike in the center. So white was making some progress on one wing. Black is trying to strike back in the center, trying to open up the path for the rook, queen, and bishop. Now white captured the pawn on d5 and black recaptured with the queen. So the queen is nicely centralized, and white even continues further, expanding here with the move h4. Interesting idea, as there is this possibility to play the move h5. Now, then the knight is under attack. You just keep your pawn on f4. No need to advance that pawn at all. How should black deal with that? And I think here Ding Liren made a very instructive mistake, as he decided to bring his king into safety by castling kingside here. Of course, it does make sense to castle in general to connect your rooks. But why to do that at the point where white is already announcing its plans of trying to push its pawns towards your king? So to me, this looks pretty strange. A better idea would have been, for instance, to play a move like knight d6. If you kick the knight away, then the knight may just go back to f8. And here, black still has the possibility to go away with the king to the other side just by castling queenside. And I think the king will just be much better off on that side of the board, can count on the support of its remaining pieces. But let's see what happened in the game. After castling kingside, now white play this move h5, attacking the knight on g6. The knight has only one square to go, it's h8. And now the knight is badly placed, of course, but after white played the move knight from c1 to e2, the knight from h8 goes back into the game via f7. White also brings its other knight to g3. Interesting idea. So the knight is heading for the f5 square. Black goes here for the move knight from c8 to d6, guarding that f5 square, making it harder for white to jump in there with the knight. But look what Aronian did here. He played the move knight f5 anyway. And that's probably a move which had been underestimated by Ding in advance. First of all, there's a huge threat here of just taking the pawn on e7 with check. It's a knight fork. White is about to win the queen in that case. You may simply whip off that knight with knight takes f5, but after g takes f5, you could also take with the bishop. But I think opening up the g file for the white rook looks very promising for white. So that's something Ding didn't want to play. And instead Ding, well, he just thought, I can ignore white's intentions. I just play the move rook d7, guarding the pawn on e7. The other rook may come to d8 at some point, and black's pieces, they look very nicely concentrated in the center, looking for opportunities, maybe to swap pieces or just to generate some threats against white's king, which is still stuck in the middle. But now the key moment of the game, which had been underestimated by the world champion, is here. Aronian came up with a beautiful idea. Just pause the video for a second if you want, and then hopefully you're able to see the idea for white how to break through here. And you do it not with a move like g5, because if you do play g5, the knight on f5 can be taken. Therefore, you first open up black's king's position with a piece sacrifice. It's knight takes pawn, knight takes g7. Well, that knight has to be taken, otherwise, well, you're just a pawn down and white's position plays itself. So black captured with the king, and now the move g5. This is beautiful because here we get to see that the g file will be opened no matter what, and also that bishop from a1 will hit the king. And this is looking incredibly dangerous. For instance, if black would decide here to run away with the king, well, then it's just g takes f6, and this diagonal will eventually be opened. You cannot take back the pawn because of bishop takes f6 with checkmate. So that's not a possibility. Well, king h8 was not played in the game, but what else should black do? You cannot move your pawn. Black is unable to keep the files closed. Played here the move e5 with the idea to try to close that diagonal so that the black king will not be hit by that bishop on a1. Well, g takes f6 was played, of course, very natural move to open up the g file. It's double check. The king has to choose here. If you do take the pawn, well, this is not going to end well. One beautiful line I want to show you. This was not played in the game because black didn't capture the pawn, but I cannot resist showing this beautiful idea. Queen h4 check, preventing the king to escape via the center. If the king goes to e6, now there is another beautiful move, f5, which does win the game for white, because the pawn is protected by the bishop. The only move here for black is knight takes f5, but that runs into the move knight to f4. This was the idea behind that pawn sacrifice. It's another knight fork, you're about to win the queen as taking the knight is met by queen f6 with checkmate. Absolutely stunning mating pattern. Therefore, black decided not to take that pawn, went back with the king into the corner, but now the queen comes in to g3, threatening checkmate on g7. There's no convenient way of dealing with that mating threat. Look at, by the way, at these bishops eyeing that king in the corner. Things are looking really bad here for black. Knight e8 played so that the rook covers the g7 square. But by moving the knight away, the pawn on e5 can now just be taken by the bishop. Pawn on f4 supports the bishop as well. Now, one of the main threats, of course, is to push the pawn to f7 with a discovered check when the king doesn't have any squares to go to. Therefore, black played here the move rook d to f7, blocking that f pawn. There's no discovered check. But can you see the killer blow? The final move of their game, which forced Liren to resign. As with the beautiful queen sacrifice, white managed to win the game in only 18 moves. Queen g7 was played, black resigned here on account of rook takes g7, pawn takes g7. It's a double attack. Okay, the king can go to g8. Now you don't want to take the rook because after king takes f8, this is far from clear. But instead, the killer blow here for white is sacrificing another piece with the move bishop takes h7. Obviously, the main idea is to deflect the king from the protection of the rook. If you take that bishop, well, it's g7 takes the rook, and white is just having too much material and threatening in various ways checkmate. So that's not a possibility, while in case the king tries to escape by just walking away, here again, no need to take the rook, just advance the pawn to g8. That's just a very good move. It's check, black has to take, well then it's bishop takes g8 with check. After the king goes away, you just take on d5. Even if black takes back, you see that white is 2 exchanges up with a number of pawns. This is absolutely hopeless. So therefore, after queen g7, Liren, disappointed, of course, resigned here, and he ended this first rapid event of the Freestyle Chess Go Challenge with only half a point out of 7 games. Well, the good thing for him is that this rapid segment is just over now, and he's, like all the other players, moving on to the knockout stage, in which, of course, Ding will play against number 1 of the events, which is Nodibek Abdusattorov. Very spectacular event. A lot of interesting games have been played here, so probably in the next few days I will cover some more interesting games I came across, some original ideas. So it's not about modern opening theory, but definitely from these games we can still learn a lot of practical things which we can apply in our normal chess games as well. Hope you agree with me on that. Let me know what you think of this game. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all the support, and very soon we see each other again. Bye bye.